And I think it's just speaking things into existence. Last week we're talking these rumors. Latifi gonna get axed mid-season from Williams. And then he makes it all the way to Q3, baby. Incredible.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 19th episode of Grid Gals. We have quite the episode for you today. We are debriefing the action-packed weekend we had at Silverstone, which if you didn't watch it, you absolutely need to. I think this is this is easily the wildest race I've ever personally watched. And with everything else that's gone on in the F1 community in the last week, we have a lot to talk about, so I think that we should probably just get down to it. Unfortunately, there were two major incidents this past week regarding racism in the F1 community, and a former world time champion and father of Max Verstappen's girlfriend, Kelly Piquet, Nelson Piquet, made a very racially charged sentiment about Lewis Hamilton involving a slur, in which the F1 community responded unanimously with support for Lewis. Always great to see, but unfortunate that, this was even a situation that had to be dealt with.
Agreed. And in the same week, too, we had that Red Bull race driver. I think he's the reserve driver for Red Bull right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yuri. He was released from the Red Bull program for racially insensitive and offensive comments.
Right, on a Twitch stream.
Yeah, and I believe that actually another Red Bull driver was hosting the Twitch stream, who is now his replacement. I think one of the things that, although obviously this is the type of stuff that should never be happening, it's completely inexcusable, I think Lewis responded and took it in stride in a way that in some instances were kind of funny, which you don't want to make light of this by any means, but there was a fan who had basically tweeted, can you imagine if Lewis Hamilton just tweeted, "Who the fuck is Nelson Piquet?" and shut off his phone? To which Lewis Hamilton retweeted it and just said, "Imagine." And, I feel like, granted, not that Nelson Piquet is a nobody, he won 3 world champions, but Lewis has stood for so much in this sport. He has had an amazing career of activism in addition to all of the feats he's accomplished as a driver, and just completely unnecessary to make comments like that.
Some people were commenting, there's been so much progress in the sport over the past couple of years, but it still shows, there's a long way to go. The F1 community responded really well and took action, and, I hope they will continue to do so.
Well, on to some lighter topics. For 2 of the gals here, their favorite drivers both had birthdays this weekend.
We love a birthday.
HBD, Danny Rick! Wish your race turned out a little bit better, but oh well.
Jack, I think we might have to have you choose a new favorite driver.
Oh!
I obviously want to see Danny Rick do really well, but for speaking purposes, I feel like
it's hard because I agree. When you're watching a race, a lot of the coverage is on the front runners or people making moves in the midfield, and sad to say, there just hasn't been either of those occurring for Daniel this season. So it is really hard to report on him because there's not much to report most of the time. It's just, I feel like, the same old story that we've been seeing for the entirety of the season.
That's not entirely true. There is some exciting news that just came out about Daniel. Not on the track.
There is. So for all you TV show buffs out there, Danny Rick signed a contract with Hulu. It looks like they're creating a TV show about F1, and he's signed on to help them write some of the scripts and help with some of the directing. So will be very cool to see how that turns out.
So you do have good Danny news. It's just, I feel you. You want it on Sunday, but...
Right. Always a special place in my heart for him. It's even hard, too, because there's still lots to talk about when it comes to Lando most races, but at the same time, he hasn't been doing particularly well either, and he's caught a bunch of tough luck. So McLaren team overall has just been hard to report on these days.
And knowing that they're not going to make any more upgrades on the car, I think this is going to be it for the rest of the season.
I mean, I don't necessarily argue with that call. You kind of got to cut your losses at some point, especially, I mean, here's a plug. If you didn't listen to our last episode, we get into a little bit more details about F1 finances and the budget, so check it out. But especially with some of the cost caps they're under, it makes a lot of sense.
And you know what? You can have a favorite driver who doesn't always perform super well, especially because they might be limited by their team, you know? It happens, okay? Because our other birthday boy...
Oh, man, there's the plug.
Okay, I mean, come on. It was teed up for me. You know, who am I to not whack the tee or ball off the tee? I don't know.
Sports, huh?
Big sports gals. Yes. That's why we have a sports podcast. Yeah, it was Sebastian Vettel's birthday on Sunday, and I won't spoil it too much, but he did get a result that was good for him in Aston Martin this year. Oh my gosh. Wait, can we talk about the bouncy ball incident?
Oh my god, hysterical.
That was so funny.
Well, basically what happened, for those unfamiliar, do you remember those gym balls you used to bounce on? They're basically like an exercise ball with a handle. And for some promo event, I guess Daniel and Lando were doing a little race in the pit lane, and basically Lando was getting after it, and so Danny took his ball to like slow him down or something and whacked him right in the face. I mean, it kind of looks like he hit it pretty hard.
Yeah, it looked pretty painful, especially because Lando was like hopping at the same time, hopping forward as he was getting whacked in the face with those huge medicine balls. All the photos were absolutely hilarious. So of course, Twitter doing what it does. There were some really good tweets out there, because I know Daniel Ricciardo tweeted just, he's okay, because everyone is obviously very concerned about Lando. Mm-hmm. To which Lewis Hamilton replied, is he really? Norris ended up posting a photo of this like character with his face smashed in, and it goes, he's okay.
I love that they're all such good friends.
But I feel like that's all F1 news.
Should we hop to qualifying?
I think so.
Okay, so we need to talk about it. We need to talk about the big elephant in the room for qualifying, because I was dying. This was the funniest thing I think I've seen in a long time. Like, we all watched it together, and I was like, there's no way. There's literally no way this is going to happen. And it did. And that is the fact that Nicholas Latifi made it past Q1. In fact, he made it all the way to Q3. Our homeboy started 10th on the grid. I'm sorry, I know we usually start and go through them all, but like...
And I think it's just speaking things into existence. Last week we're talking these rumors. Latifi gonna get axed mid-season from Williams, and then he makes it all the way to Q3, baby. Incredible.
You just need to start saying that McLaren is gonna pull Danny Rick's contract, because you said that he was safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and now he's not performing.
Yeah, that's true.
McLaren axing Danny Rick. News on the street.
Apparently we just need to be bigger haters.
All the rumors are true. Yeah.
Oh my god. I want you to know this is the only spoiler I got before we watched qualifying, because we had watched it in a little bit of a delay. But my brother,
of course he did. That the world's only Nicholas Latifi fan, aside from Nicholas Latifi's mom.
There's a large trending hashtag of Latifi's GOAT. I'll have you know.
Yeah, there are a lot of Latifi fans.
Should I take Latifi as my new driver?
I mean,
he finished ahead of
He did.
So did Lance Stroll. So did everyone that didn't crash and burn, pretty much.
Almost. But we'll get there.
Again, speaking about disappointment for our faves, it was tough to hear the radio message to Seb getting dropped in Q1. As well as both Haas's. Both Mick and K-Mag dropped in Q1.
K-Mag surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, the one that really surprised me, actually, though, was Alex Albon.
Yeah.
Especially because his teammate out-qualified him.
And he's been doing historically pretty well.
Yeah, Albon has always been the stronger Williams driver for this season, and so to see Latifi, and Albon was pissed. Like, the footage of him in the garage after he got dropped from Q1, he was real mad. But again, wet qualifying shakes things up.
Is he still rocking the red hair?
I don't think so.
It needed to go.
But Our boy Valtteri Bottas did maintain his streak of making it at least to Q2, and unfortunately that's where he stayed this time. No Q3 appearance, but his teammate, Zhou did out-qualify him for Alfa Romeo, making it to 9th.
I feel that Bottas started off the season strong, and we've seen his pace slow a little bit. Like, he's now been solidly kind of dropping in Q2, barely making it in there. Not fighting for the places as much as we saw him at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I wonder if the Alfa Romeo is just not making the upgrades and improvements that we've seen some of the top teams do. Because I think Bottas, and we know Bottas is a great driver, so it is disappointing to see where he's placing, but amazing to see Zhou Guanyu do so well in his rookie season, finally having the opportunity to do so. Other important items in qualifying, I think Verstappen's superb driving, did a 360 and righted it. Granted, messed up his lap, but it was pretty cool to see because qualifying was all in the rain. It was at differing points of dryness on the track, but a wet qualifying.
Yeah, that was great. And, we saw some of our usual suspects up there in Q3. I think worth noting that Lewis Hamilton actually qualified 3 places ahead of George Russell. George has been very consistent all year. He ended up qualifying in 8th. Lewis ended up in 5th, both for Mercedes. And I think the probably most exciting part of qualifying was the fact that Ferrari's very own Carlos Sainz got his maiden pole here at Silverstone. And he did say that this was particularly special for him because earlier in his racing career, before F1, back in the junior leagues, his first ever pole was also at Silverstone.
Oh, that's cute. I didn't know that.
And so for him to get his maiden F1 pole on his 150th race was really sentimental for him. Really exciting to see. And his teammate, Charles Leclerc, the other Ferrari, ended up in 3rd with Max Verstappen from Red Bull, splitting them, and our other Red Bull, Sergio Perez, following in 4th.
Honestly, we have so much to talk about when it comes to the race. Like, I can't sit here and just chit-chat about qualifying anymore. KP, take us away. Read us the race results.
Because I'm not going to lie, it's really hard to talk about qualifying, like knowing how everything ended up with the race. So yeah, just knock her out.
All right. So starting from the bottom, we had 6 DNFs. The first one was Alex Albon with Williams, Zhou Guanyu with Alfa Romeo, George Russell with Mercedes, Valtteri Bottas with Alfa Romeo, Pierre Gasly with AlphaTauri, and Esteban Ocon with Alpine.
It's a lot of DNFs.
That is. And I feel like a lot of them were taken out in the first lap. We'll get there. But in 14th, we have Yuki Tsunoda with AlphaTauri. In 13th, Daniel Ricciardo with McLaren. 12th, Nicholas Latifi with Williams. 11th, we have Lance Stroll with Aston Martin. Now into our top 10, we have Kevin Magnussen with Haas. In 9th, we have Sebastian Vettel with Aston Martin.
Birthday points!
Mick Schumacher was in 8th with Haas. In 7th, we had Max Verstappen with Red Bull. In 6th, we had Lando Norris with McLaren. In 5th, we had Fernando Alonso with Alpine. In 4th, we had Charles Leclerc with Ferrari. And for our podium finish, we had Lewis Hamilton with Mercedes, Sergio Perez with Red Bull, and Carlos Sainz with Ferrari.
And the one fact that I was dying to say in qualifying is not only did he get his first junior pole at Silverstone, but that same race, he got his first win. For him to not only get his first F1 pole, but his first F1 win in the same race at Silverstone, just like he did back in his junior career. He was getting very emotional in the post-race interviews, and understandably so. I mean, the story of how he got it, oh boy, buckle up. But great result.
It's the second longest wait for a win for an F1 driver.
The first being Checo Perez, who was standing next to him, showering him with champagne. So cute that they were able to share that moment. One last podium fact before we move on to the race. Because Lewis Hamilton did end this race on the podium, he officially broke the record held by Michael Schumacher of the most poles at one single circuit. Previously, it was 12, for which he was tied with Schumacher. Schumacher did hold that record at 3 separate circuits, but now that Lewis Hamilton has been on the podium 13 times at Silverstone, he has broken that record.
I will say Hamilton seems much more focused now that we're into the middle part of the season. Like, all of the drivers, when we had that long break, we'll get into it about what happens at the start of the race, he seemed very calm. Him and Angela were doing their stretches. Like, he seemed very much so in the zone, where I think we had seen at the beginning of the season a more frazzled, less calm version of Hamilton.
Yeah, as soon as he gets a decent car, he's calm again.
It felt like old Hamilton, and honestly, it was good to see because it was getting a little depressing. He's also just a great driver. Like, he's fun to watch.
He is very fun to watch, yeah.
And there was a particular moment that was really fun to watch, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We have to talk about lap 1.
I know, I feel like we almost need to go in order to
Yes.
this race.
Yes, genuinely so much happened.
And I just want to say, Gasly started the crash.
This is the second time you're singing on this.
Just
It's like, okay, for all my Office fans out there, Ryan started the fire, Gasly started the crash. That's all I gotta say. And boy, what a crash it was, right off the start.
I did not know that was an Office quote.
I didn't know it was an Office quote. I knew you were trying to sing "He Didn't Start the Fire."
They remakes it in The Office to Ryan started the fire. Gasly
right.
started the crash.
He did start the crash.
And
That he did.
holy
That he
shit,
did.
what a crash.
And I don't know if you guys have F1 TV, but with F1 TV on the app, you can go and watch from different drivers' perspectives. And this was a really fun one to dissect what happened because I hadn't seen any breakdowns of how the crash happened. So I started watching it from all the different perspectives till I worked my way up to where Zhou Guanyu was. But you're right, it was Gasly that started it. Hit Russell. Russell hit Zhou Guanyu and sent him flying into the barricade.
And that was, if you saw the photos, the slowed down videos, and knowing that he was okay made it a little bit more manageable to see the pictures and the video footage, but it was shocking to watch.
I'm legitimately so glad that I watched this race on a delay and not live because you could see it in the camera angle and they were not showing replays. You could see the car upside down, slam into the barriers, and then the fact that they were not showing any replays is immediately a red flag, and which they did actually immediately red flag the race. We'll get into how that impacted the restart, but it was a 50-minute delay, and during that time, they were showing other angles of the start, but they would not show any visuals of the crash until they confirmed he was okay, which is the right thing to do. But you could hear as the time went on and as the delay stretched out, the fear in the commentator's voice as they're trying to fill airtime and continue to talk basically around the elephant in the room. And the longer it went on, I mean, you could hear the genuine fear and concern in their voices. And I'm so glad that watching it, I knew he was okay because that is the most horrific crash I've ever seen.
Well, the car jumped the barriers. Like, it flipped over and jumped over the barriers into the fence. Like, it was...
Yeah, because they even said that the fence did an amazing job because they put it there to obviously catch any debris. I know a lot of the fans were really upset when they started doing that, but caught the full impact of the car, probably saving a lot of fans' lives out there.
Yeah, and then it hit bottom side down, and he was wedged between the fencing and the barriers, which was part of what took the extraction team so long to get him out. You know, they had a doctor sent out there with the extraction team, and they were working to safely remove him from the car. But I think this is probably, we've seen it before, especially last year, you know, the incident at Imola with Verstappen and Hamilton, the impact of the halo. I mean, that was like almost nothing compared to this. This halo undoubtedly saved his life.
Right, because Zhou Guanyu's car flipped, and he slid across the remainder of the track and into the gravel completely upside down. And they show their skid marks, and not even skid marks, but indentations in the concrete of the track where the halo was hitting obviously was the only reason he's alive.
And I mean, to the fact where they obviously took him to the medical center, they took him away in a stretcher, but he was conscious. He was able to actually, later on, I think during the race, he returned to the track.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, back in the day, like, you for sure would have been dead, let alone able to walk away with minor injuries.
Right. I think the other person that was injured during this race was Alex Albon, because he got hit pretty hard in the first lap.
Yeah, because there was a secondary incident. So there was the primary one. Basically, Pierre Gasly tried to run up through the gap, got squeezed, hit Russell. Russell went into Zhou. But then on the other side of the track, you had an additional collision. I know Sebastian ran into the back of Alex Albon, sending him across the track. And then you just have these almost like ripple effect of minor incidents just all across the track.
Right, and because the session was red flagged, the cars that were damaged could, if their car would allow, could limp back to the pits to repair any of that damage, and that's where all the other cars went as well. I think what was notable is that Russell, since he turned off his car and got out to go check on Zhou Guanyu, he wasn't allowed to get back in his car and drive it back. And whether it was unclear whether it was going to turn back on after the fact, but because he couldn't get it restarted, he could not continue in the race.
Yeah, I think they would have let him if the car started and he could limp his way back around. But yeah, the car wasn't going to get around on just 3 wheels. It wasn't starting back up. He argued quite a bit with the...
Yeah, I do think him arguing with the marshals, I'm not sure how much of that was, even really worth the time. Like, if your car's not starting, they're going to have to put on the flatbed regardless, but...
Yeah, at that point, I feel like you're trying whatever you can. It's one of those things where it's worth asking type of deal.
Yeah. But they actually red flagged the session so quickly, because this all happened at turn 1, that an order could not be established for the restart because not everybody had made it past where the safety car checkpoint was. And so when they did do the restart, even though, especially at the front of the grid, where everybody had escaped kind of the chaos that unfolded behind them, it didn't really matter. They actually restarted in the original positions because they had not gotten far enough into the lap to even establish an order.
Which was upsetting for the drivers that had actually gotten off really well. So Verstappen had already taken the lead in the race. Hamilton also got a really good start. Checo didn't have a good start. So this gave everyone sort of a second chance, whether they wanted it or not, and gave a lot of the drivers a chance to change tires as well. So Max actually started on softs. That's why he got such a good head start. Put on mediums for the reformed start.
And it was interesting because the commentators did make a note that they think that part of the reason there were so many incidents towards the back of the grid was just that so many people had bad starts all at once. Where occasionally, some people always have bad starts, but it was pretty unusual that so many people struggled with their starts, and that's part of the reason why so many cars were involved in incidents.
And I want to see what tires everyone started on. I think the hard tires are causing a lot of issues this year.
Yeah, and they said that happened throughout the race as well, that the hard tires were just not performing as anticipated. And this weekend, there's always the 3 compounds of soft, medium, and hard, but these were the 3 hardest compounds in the Pirelli range, and so those hards are truly the hardest that you're going to see all season.
Because I want to say Russell started on those hards. So it could be the reason. That's a little tinfoil hat of me, but that could be the reason.
It's okay. Bring out your tinfoil hat. We're here for it. Although, selfishly, as a Ferrari fan, I was glad that the original grid order was restored, because with his second shot, Carlos Sainz did not waste it. Eminem says you only get 1 shot, but he got 2. And he really made the most of it. He got a much better start on the restart.
And to be noted, on the restart, Latifi was then in 8th. Just saying.
Which, that has to be his best start of the season.
10th was his best start of the season, so 8th is even better.
Look at our guy. Look at him go.
But I think it's important to note in the restart as well that Checo and Leclerc both had wing damage.
Mm-hmm.
That I think they drove with for quite a few laps. I know Checo ended up pitting a couple laps later, and Leclerc kept on going for quite a while.
Yeah, I think the big thing about the early pit stop for Checo and there were a lot of pit stops in this race, which traditionally people try to do a one stop at Silverstone, and that clearly didn't happen here. But Checo actually tumbled all the way to the bottom of the remaining grid order, which at that point was P16.
And I might be biased, but I think the next notable lap was lap 10, and that's when Carlos Sainz made a pretty big error, allowing Verstappen to take the lead of the race. And in the same lap, I believe Yuki Tsunoda had an issue, locked up, and took out his teammate, Pierre Gasly, which they both were able to get back on track, but obviously put them down in the order.
It was also kind of funny because they actually not only screwed each other over, but legitimately got a penalty.
Yeah.
Too. A 5-second penalty.
Yeah.
Against your own teammate. So, real tough for the Alphas. AlphaTauris, well, and Alfa Romeos. Just tough weekend for the Alphas. All around.
Then I think, what was it, lap 13 is when Verstappen ran over some debris. And at the time, I don't think we actually knew that it was debris.
He just thought he had a puncture. Which, I mean, Granted, how much had already happened on the track at this point. Not surprised that there's debris hanging out there. But
Right. And he immediately saw a loss in the performance of his car, went in, he pitted just a few laps later. They gave him new tires, and then quickly found out that it was damage to the actual car. So there was going to be a loss of performance for the rest of the race. They said it wasn't critical, so there was no safety concerns, but it was going to be a tough race from there on out.
Which I think we can see ultimately with the result of Verstappen ending up where he was, which I'm sure when we were reading those results would have been a surprise considering prior to this race, I think he had, a 45-point lead in the Drivers' Championship? Pretty comfortable.
Yeah, which just goes to show you, I feel like this is the fun thing about F1 is that all of these chance things really play with the points all year. So it's not like anyone truly ever runs away with it.
Yeah, and with Verstappen tumbling down the order a bit, it left some room for a little Ferrari drama up front. Sainz retook the lead, and Leclerc, who was behind him, was very frustrated and basically swearing on the radio, saying that Carlos was messing up his race because Hamilton was right behind him. So there was some internal team drama about, are they going to give Sainz the team orders to move, let Leclerc take the lead? Ultimately, they decided to take the opportunity to pit Sainz, give Leclerc some free air, and bring him in for new hards in the process to kind of diffuse the situation, if you will.
Yeah, I think they kind of took the easy way out. I think the better call would have been to have Leclerc go ahead and pass Sainz because Leclerc was putting up faster times.
Well, I think it ended up working because in this case, too, Leclerc was still suffering from the front wing damage. Luckily, when Sainz came back out, he was in P3 right behind Hamilton. Eventually, they did pit Leclerc just a couple of laps later. Emerging from the pits was back behind Sainz again.
In the same lap that Leclerc pitted, though, Gasly got the meatball flag. Which...
Meatball flag?
Jack, do you know which flag is the meatball flag?
Oh, I
Can you
should
guess?
remember this
Is this
one.
the orange and black one?
Yeah.
Why do you
The
call
Halloween.
it a meatball?
The Halloween.
That's what all of the commentators were calling it, and I had no idea why they were saying the meatball flag. But it's literally because it's like an orangish red dot in the middle of a black flag.
I call it the Halloween moon.
Yeah.
I like Halloween moon. And yeah, right about this time, we did unfortunately see Bottas retire.
He had a reliability issue, so unfortunately had to retire the car. Not a great weekend for the Alphas. I know we said this before, but really not a great weekend for them and my fantasy team.
And also concerning this being a Ferrari engine.
Although the actual Ferraris, I mean, they looked pretty good the whole race. Although when they did pit Leclerc, one notable thing is that Hamilton took the lead. And this is the first time all season that Hamilton has taken the lead. I think I also heard them say a stat that farthest he's gone into a season without winning a race was the 10th race of the season, and this was what, 9?
Yep.
So he's getting close to breaking one of his own records, and not necessarily a great one. But he was leading for a while, and he had really good pace considering how old his tires were. So at this point, a lot of other people were pitting as well. Hamilton was out in front, obviously didn't want to lose the track position. And one thing we rarely hear on Hamilton's radio, he kept telling his engineers, tires are good.
Yep.
Tires are good. Don't bring me in. Tires are good.
Yep.
There was no, Bono, my tires.
How the turntables have turned.
Not at this Silverstone. Nuh-uh.
Because what lap was he leading in?
He took the lead in lap 26. And this is a 52. So,
Okay.
Pretty much exactly the halfway mark.
Because I know even at lap 30, the Ferraris were still feuding, and pretty significantly.
Yeah, to the point where Sainz actually was told to move over.
They did give him a time to beat, and he couldn't get that time. He did, almost beg for another lap to say, one more lap, I can make it, I can do it, and then couldn't. But I almost wonder, was that lap time really doable? Because I would be interested to see if Leclerc actually did a better lap time after. I know he did kind of take it away after that, and he was a couple seconds ahead once they allowed him to go past Sainz.
Yeah, and I think you can argue about the Ferrari strategy and what that looks like, because it did come up again, but ultimately things got even more interesting because we did have a retirement from Ocon, lap 38. Again, probably due to the damage sustained earlier in the race from the incident. Not sure. He couldn't make it back to the pits and eventually did just pull over near Copse Corner, bringing out another safety car, as if Silverstone hadn't been interesting enough.
And I feel like this is when it got super spicy, because how the strategies played out for each team was pretty interesting. And I think Ferrari either did a really good job or a really bad job, and I haven't decided yet.
Oh my god, I think Ferrari did a great job, because ultimately what happened was with the restart after the safety car, they initially gave Carlos the team orders of, you need to hold up everyone behind you and give Leclerc a chance to get a... And he basically was like, no.
Right.
I'm going to be faster than Charles. I'm going to race. I'm going to do it. And he was real heated on the radio. And he did. He did. He took off.
Yeah, but I wonder if they would have allowed Leclerc to pit. Then he would have had new softs, and he would have been just as quick, if not quicker.
I think they were really concerned based on their last double stack and the performance that I think, and I was hearing a lot on the commentators basically saying that the reaction time for them to make the decision to call Leclerc in was so short. Mm-hmm. They basically had 6 seconds to decide if they wanted to call him in or not, and they didn't. They ultimately chose not to, and you can argue about whether it's the right choice or not. Everybody else, however, did take advantage of the safety car, came in, got new tires, including Hamilton and Checo and Sainz. And so the rest of the pack has fresh tires, with the race leader, Leclerc, being stuck on old tires. And that was when the call was made, hey Sainz, he's on old tires. Help your buddy out. Hold up the rest of the pack. And It was a firm, I will not be doing that. I will be winning this race. Thank you very much.
But it's upsetting that Sainz has to be the person that makes that call, because I feel like he did the same thing with a couple races ago where he said he's going to stay out on these tires. He was choosing his own strategy while he's driving the car. And it happened again here. He's choosing the strategy that's going to be the most successful for him.
Yeah, but I feel like part of that is that's what makes you a good driver.
Yeah, for sure. I also think it's funny how these things are phrased across the radio because they know that, one, they're being recorded, and two, like, everyone can hear it in real time. The way Ferrari told Sainz was, give Leclerc some breathing room, 10 cars length of breathing room.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's like, no, don't do this to me. Like, I can do this. Which I'm glad he did.
Well, once they got racing again. That was action-packed. So Sainz took off, and then you have Leclerc and Checo battling it out. Mm-hmm. And Leclerc got really aggressive on one of those corners. Almost, you could say, a little too aggressive. It was definitely a risky move he made. But then Hamilton took advantage, and he just slid right on through. And the fans went nuts. I mean, it's Silverstone. It's his home race. He hasn't been driving like this all season. And then just to see him, that's the thing of beauty. That's what I'm talking about. Like, I miss that Hamilton. I mean, granted, he couldn't hold on to it. Checo did eventually pass him again to get back up into second, but it was fun to watch.
I think of everyone that I've talked to, they've all said that was their favorite moment. Mainly because, like, it was so much of a battle between all three of the drivers, and that's what we've been wanting this whole season. So I think this has been my favorite race, I think, that I've ever seen live.
So much happened. It was like from the very start, and thankfully everyone was okay, but it was some brilliant driving.
And I know we've been talking about the front of the grid, but this was kind of funny. Max Verstappen was having a little battle himself back there in P7 with Mick Schumacher. And there were a couple points where basically Schumacher said he thought Verstappen got too aggressive and was pushing him off the track. And, you know, I kind of love that even though he's down in P7, like,
points are points.
He's driving with a broken car, and he's still like, absolutely not, I will run you off the road if I have to. Finally, Haas got double points with K-Mag up in P10, and Seb took home some birthday points for Aston Martin. No points for Latifi, though.
Where did Latifi end up?
P12.
Out of 16?
Out of 14.
Out of 14.
Out of 14. You know, I know because my driver was 13.
Aww.
Could be worse.
It could be one car worse. I feel like that might be the most that we've had to discuss on any one race.
But I think this is one of those that's going to, like, go down. It's going to be an infamous race. I truly feel like we're not going to be done hearing about this one.
And I'm not mad about it. I love this race. This is a good one.
Very fun to watch. So if you haven't watched, do yourself a favor and catch every replay you can.
At every angle. Well, thanks so much for listening to another race recap here with the Grid Gals. We loved having you here. For links to all of our socials, you can check out our website, gridgals.com. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to reach out, drop a note, say hi, ask any questions, leave us some thoughts for a future episode, you can email us at gridgals@gmail.com.
And that's Checkered Flag for this session. We'll see you back on the grid next week.